Hi, let's start on arrays. Now this is a very interesting unit because arrays enable us to do quite a lot of things, and it is a feature in almost every programming language. It's built into a language, built into most programming language. So we're going to start on what exactly are arrays. We look at the syntax, retrieving and modifying elements, and how to insert elements into an array. Right, let's start from what are arrays. Now, we have been talking about types. For example, I can store an integer into a variable called x. I can store a string. Okay, I can store a floating point value. I can store nil, which means it stores nothing. I can store a boolean, x equals to true or false. Now these are the common types we have been seeing so far. Now, an array can be viewed as a type as well. It can be viewed as an ordered list of elements. Now, by the word ordered, it means that the elements or the items in the list has an order. Alright, and these elements are all indexed, meaning they have a number, and the first number is 0. Now it sounds a bit fuzzy now. Now just imagine, okay, these are the elements. Alright, these are the elements. You can store stuff into each cell. So for example, I can store the number 50, the number 52, the number 100, the number -2. And this will be an array, a list of items, in this case a list of integers, and it is ordered, meaning that the first position, index is 0, that is a value. In the second position, index is 1, that is a value, and so on. Arrays are expandable, meaning if you can have 100 slots. Now each of this hole here, or each of this cell here, I use the term slot, S-L-O-T. You can insert values into these slots. Okay, and each slot has a number which identifies that slot. Okay, so let's show an example. Before that, let me try to put this here, because I'm trying to create an array which basically represents this list of items. So, which brings us to syntax. Now, this is one way to actually create an array. This is the right part here, and then assign the array to a variable. You can call a variable x, y, any good name. So let's do it in IRB. Okay, so x equals to square bracket 50, 52, 100, -2, close square bracket, and that's it. What I've done here, I've created an array of 4 elements, or 4 items, 4 integers in this case, and it is stored. This array is stored in a variable called x. When I type x, okay, you can see that the array's value is displayed. The values of this array are displayed. Now, I mentioned here that elements can be of different types. Now, the example I've shown here, in this example, all the elements are of the same type, they are integers. But for the case of Ruby, it is possible to have, let me create another array called y, to have a mixture. So the first element is a string, the second element is a number, an integer, the third element is a floating point value, the fourth element can be a boolean, the fifth element can be nil, sixth element can be another string, num string. Okay, close square brackets. So I've created an array called y, which contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements, and they are of different types. Okay, so the elements of an array can be of different types. In fact, one of the elements can be another array, and we'll talk about that in a later unit. Okay, we call that multi-dimensional arrays, stuff like that. So let's move on to syntax. I've shown this as an example. This is one way to create and assign the array to a variable. This is another way if your array consists of a range of numbers. Okay, very easy. Instead of z equals to let's say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, you can do z equals to star 5.10. Remember, in Ruby, this means a range of numbers from 5 to 10, including both 5 and 10. Enter. You see. So this is a useful shortcut if the elements in your arrays are consecutive. Now, this is another way to create a new array. The number here represents the number of slots in the array. So let's try. I call it A equals to array.new, the capital A array. Let's say 5 slots. So by default, all the 5 slots, each of the slots will contain nil, nothing. Okay, so basically they're just it's just a placeholder with 5 slots, 5 empty slots. So these are 3 common syntax used to create arrays. So let's move on to retrieving and modifying elements. Now you have seen how to view all the values in an array. For example, A, X, Y, Z. Okay, how do I retrieve a particular element? How do I retrieve, for example, in this case, this is array X, right? How do I retrieve number 3, the third element, with an index of 2? Remember, the indexing starts from 0, so the third element has an index of 2, not 3. Okay, the fourth element has an index of 3. And just get used to it. Don't ask me why. It's very common for in most programming languages. Array indexing starts from 0. It's a com science thing. Okay, so how do I retrieve the third element from X? I do this: X, the variable name, and the index. Ta-da! And that's it. I managed to retrieve the value stored at the third element or third slot. So I can do something like value equals to X 1. Okay, and that is this one, 52. Okay, I can always check the values in X. So X1 refer to this one, 52. Okay, so value stores 52. So this is one way to retrieve a particular element at a particular index. Okay, if I try to retrieve something at an invalid index, for example, X contains 4 elements, right? Try to retrieve the fifth element. Fifth element meaning position number 5. Index is 5. Sorry, let me say again. I'm trying to retrieve the fifth element, this one. And there's no fifth element. Index is 4. Index is 4, not 5. I'll get nothing. What about nothing? Okay, so just be careful. If you try to retrieve something in Ruby, this is specific to Ruby. If you try to retrieve an element at a so-called invalid index, you'll get nil. What about -1? Doesn't seem to make sense. Okay, but this is again specific to Ruby. There's no such thing as -1, index -1. But when you have a negative index, as far as Ruby is concerned, -1 with the last index. That's the meaning. -2 will be the last second index, 100. -3 will be the last third index, which is this one. And in this case, -4 will be last fourth index. -5 will give you, is something invalid, is something in front of this. Okay, so nil gets returned. So this negative index thing for an array it works for Ruby, but does not work for some other programming languages. Just be aware of that. Okay, so that is retrieval of specific elements using the index. What about modifying? Okay, I have an array, let's say in this case x, right? I want to modify a particular value. Let's say I want to modify the third element, this one, index of 0, 1, 2, index 2. I want to change it from 100 to 99. Just do this. I assign a new value to position number 2. That means the third element in the array. Okay, let me check the value of x again. You see, it has been changed. Let's try some more. X 3 equals to apple. Let's check out x. Okay, remember in Ruby, arrays can have different types. Let's do something interesting. X4. Remember, in this case, 0, 1, 2, 3. There's no fourth element. X4 equals to 10. X15 equals to 9.99. Now check this out. What happens if you try to do this? You are basically trying to insert a 16th element into x, and x has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements, 0 to 4. Now what you have done now is you have automatically inserted a series of nils in between up to index number 15. Okay, so all this will be nils. So be aware of what you are doing. Alright, be aware of what you are doing. I can do x minus 1 equals to orange. So what happens? The last element, remember, minus 1 is the last element, minus 2 is the second last element. X minus 2 equals to banana. You see? Here. Okay, so now you have covered how to retrieve an element from an array, how to modify elements, and the last part of this unit we are going to talk about inserting elements from the back and from the front. Now if you want to insert elements from the back, use this operator. Remember, there's no space in between the two small than signs. You use this operator. Okay, let me give an example here. Let's deal with a smaller array. What is in A? Okay, A. What is in Z? Okay, let's deal with Z. I want to insert something at the back. So Z 88. Let's check out what is in Z now. Okay, I've inserted a new element at the back. Z, let's say force. Z new. Z 0. Okay, so the new elements are always inserted from the back, and of course the actual indexes of these new values you have to count from the front. What about you want to insert an element from the front? You use x.unshift. X.unshift and the new value here, for example 10. Example. Let's go back to the same variable Z. Z.unshift. Let's say minus 2. You see what is in Z now? It is a new element, minus 2 is inserted in front. Now be careful. Once you have inserted an element from the front, the indexes of these elements will be different or changed. Okay. Let's try a simpler example. Let me create Y. Now what is this? Y is now an empty array. Okay, let me insert something from the back. Okay, so the index, the first element of Y is 10, the second element of Y is 11. So if I insert something to the front of Y, let's say 0, we realize that Y0 is now this one. Okay, Y1 is now this one. It's different. Just now Y0 is 10. Okay, the reason is because after you have inserted stuff from the front, the indexes of the remaining elements will change. Okay, the first element is always 0. It's always 0. So that is actually quite important. You need to know what you're trying to do. Okay, so inserting from the back, inserting from the front.